Hello and welcome to the Northeast Ohio Media Group Candidate Debates. I'm your moderator, Sarah Dorn. I'm here with the Gates Mills Village Council candidates. There are 4 candidates running for 3 seats on the council. We'll get to the questions in a minute, but first, the rules. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question with a minute for follow-up. At the end of the debate, we'll take 10 minutes for the candidates to ask each other questions and cover anything we didn't get to in the debate. So candidates, why don't you introduce yourselves?
My name is Charles Belson. I'm a resident of Gates Mills, and I've been a resident for 12 years. I'm a professional architect, and I have spent the last few years on the serving Gates Mills on one of their committees, including one for the Architectural Review Board, the Historic Review Subcommittee.
Okay.
Hello.
Ms. Turner?
I'm Sandra Turner. I currently serve on council, finishing up my first term and running for re-election.
And I'm Jay Auwerter. I'm a resident of Gates Mills. I have been for 19 years. I serve on several activities within the village. I'm on the Finance Committee, the Long Range Financial Planning Committee. I've been on the Regional Commission on Oil and Gas this year, which was commissioned by the Gates Mills Village Council. I'm on the Improvement Society, and my wife is also very active in Gates Mills on the Architectural Review Board, on the Gates Mills Garden Club, and was headed up the campaign to raise the fundraising campaign to put in our local library. So we've been very active members of the Gates Mills community.
All right, let's get started. The first question I have is about fracking. The issue that polarized Gates Mills most last year was a proposed Bill of Rights that, among other things, would ban fracking essentially in the village. We'll start with you, Mr. Belson. What did you think of the Bill of Rights, and what should the village do about potential deep well fracking?
The Bill of Rights was a response to a proposal by the mayor to have a program where the village would pool their land with other members of the village in a trust. Mm-hmm. And some people thought that was inviting drilling into the village rather than controlling it. And the reaction to that was the fracking ban that was included in the Bill of Rights. Others, more recently, have proposed a charter amendment that would be someplace kind of in the middle that would allow voters to decide rather than either one of these 2 extremes. And that's the current 2015 charter amendment that will be on the ballot in November.
Mm-hmm. And you helped draft that?
Yes, I was on the committee for that amendment and was one of the authors of that particular charter amendment.
Okay, so Ms. Turner, what do you think the village should do about potential fracking? There is no hydraulic fracturing in the village as of now. There are vertical wells, but no horizontal wells. So what do you think the village should do about potential horizontal wells?
That's a great question for me, since I've been co-chairing our regional commission for exploration and study with regard to oil and gas drilling. That commission was started by the village council in January, and its intent was to bring together disparate voices, people who are environmentalists, engineers, scientists, elected officials, educators, to educate us about the various issues related to deep well horizontal fracking. It's been just a terrific experience. Chip has served as our communications chair for that commission, and we are now preparing some final recommendations that will be available and promoted early in the year, early in 2016, with some recommendations for next steps. As an individual from Gates Mills, I would say personally, I like everyone I know in the village is not interested in horizontal fracking. The intent of the commission was to find ways and recommendations to address safety and health, and for any community in the greater region who is interested in gas well drilling, that they would have some options for doing that in a safe way. And for communities like ours that are not interested at all, we were hoping to come up with some legal ways to at least interrupt the process, which unfortunately the state has taken away all of our local control.
Okay, Mr. Auwerter?
First of all, when I introduced myself, I said my name is Jay Auwerter. My nickname is Chip, which Sandra just referred to me as, but on the ballot I am Jay Auwerter. So I'm going to answer the broader question. I am opposed to horizontal drilling in a densely populated community like the Village. The Village is zoned for residential purposes, as are most densely populated communities, and horizontal drilling is an industrial activity. The state legislature has put in a lot of measures that make it, that facilitate the ability to drill for the drilling companies. We've worked very hard on the regional commission to come up with ways that we feel can bring much more local control legally to control or prevent drilling in a village like, or a community like Gates Mills. With regard to issue 51 last fall, which was the beginning of your question, that did not deal with drilling. It dealt with community rights that went way beyond drilling and was an extreme radical overreach to anything that would be appropriate. And it was soundly defeated and is not in favor of most anybody in the Village. So it wouldn't have stopped drilling at all. It would have raised a lot of lawsuits, as a community bill of rights like that have done in other communities. They have brought about lawsuits that have cost communities a lot of money. So not in favor of that at all.
Okay, so Council President Turner, did you want to take a minute for follow-up?
Yes, I would just add that I was not in favor of issue 51. I worked against that, and I'm very pleased that it was defeated. You mentioned something key in your question, and that was that that issue would have banned fracking, and it would not have done that. And that's what was posed to the residents, but was misleading because it would not have banned fracking. It's much more complex than that, and our voters were able to see that and voted it down 70% to 30%.
So why wouldn't it have banned fracking? I mean, I think that was one of the goals of the Bill of Rights, is to give residents a decision whether or not they wanted fracking to come in there. So can you, sure, you can
Sure.
explain that if you know the answer.
Yeah, the answer is that in 2004, the state legislature took over the rules, basically, and the regulations for fracking. And I would say, except for Gates Mills' own property. In other words, the state law, no one at the state level, and no state law compels us to violate our own zoning laws, which actually are on the books, and they ban fracking in Gates Mills. So Gates Mills itself and its council have voted to have gas wells in place. In 2008, I guess it was, we have 3. And they just bought a gas well in July. And again, nothing is compelling us to violate our violate our own zoning ordinances. So this new charter amendment recognizes that. And in a sense, it's not a ban, but it's allowing voters to decide whether to have fracking on village-owned property.
Okay, Mr. Auwerter?
Well, that isn't what issue 51 was about, and it really didn't address it. It actually cast us illegally against the state laws and would have cost us a tremendous amount to ban. But issue 56, the charter amendment that's being proposed, is a whole different kettle of fish, and I'm also opposed to that.
Okay. So that leads me to my next question. Mr. Belson, why don't you explain the charter amendment that you have helped draft and circulate petitions for? And Council President Turner and Mr. Auwerter, why don't you tell us what you think about that? So,
And let me just correct you, I'm a council member.
Okay.
Karen Schneider, who is our running for mayor unopposed, is our current council president.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, the amendment is based on the concept that extraordinary things are happening with fracking. It can bring great wealth to the village, and it can bring great harm to the village. And that's what the commission is going to describe in their report. And having said that, the amendment recognizes that within the village land itself, that's an opportunity to display best practices, I'll say, because we control the land in the village and the state does not, in a sense. So anyway, this amendment simply says when council passes an ordinance that has a modification or a new lease for horizontal fracking, it does not become effective until it is approved by the voters. And that was last done in 1995. It was an extraordinary year when a city water program was established for Gates Mills. Council passed an ordinance. We had a charter amendment at that time, same language as this one, and it became effective when the voters approved it. So this ordinance is neither pro-fracking or anti-fracking. It's simply saying the voters get to determine whether something of this magnitude that will change the character of our village potentially. That's the core of it.
Okay.
Couple of responses. One, issue 56, like issue 51, misled voters to thinking that this was a way to ban fracking. Again, it's much more complex than that, and state law controls the pooling and unitization and the drilling process. So simply saying that the voters would have the opportunity to ban fracking is, again, very misleading.
It never says that.
And it presents an opportunity. People can vote for or against fracking as is mentioned in issue 56. What it does, however, it creates the opportunity, actually, for fracking that does not currently exist by having the charter changed such that by a vote of the electorate, there could be horizontal drilling, which does not exist now. One of the things that we're attempting to promote through the Regional Commission are enhancement of zoning regulations that would provide for greater regulation over health and safety of any industrial process. So it would exclude any type of industrial practice, which we all would agree includes horizontal fracking. So there are many other issues that are problematic with 56 that maybe Chip can get into, but again, I'm not supporting that issue either.
Okay.
Okay, with regard to issue 56, number one, I think it's totally unnecessary. There isn't a shred of evidence that any current or past council member has ever been in favor of horizontal drilling. I don't think it's appropriate to tie the hands of village council on issue specifics. And the issue on the water was a one-time thing and is not appropriate for something like this. More importantly, there's likely to be very unintended consequences, and we have one that's actually taking place right now. Had issue 56 been in place, it would have had the exact opposite effect. The village is trying to buy a 10-acre parcel along with the Land Conservancy with the intent of putting a pumping station on that property. By doing so, it will save the village approximately $100,000 each year, so it's a very significant event. On that property is a vertical gas well. When that was brought to council's attention, Sandra Turner was in attendance. I was observing council that night. From our work on the Regional Commission, we knew instantly that we needed to dig into the lease on that property. We did that and found that it did have the opportunity to turn that into a horizontal well. We've worked with Bass Energy and have reached agreement to an amendment to stop that. And had the issue 56 been approved and in place, that transaction would have never gone through, and that well would be sitting there with the opportunity of the owner to turn it into a horizontal well. So there's an example of exactly the opposite effect, unintended consequence that isn't being foreseen in this charter amendment.
Okay, Mr. Belson, did you want to take a minute for follow-up?
Sure. I was at that meeting, and I was actually the person that sat as a resident, not as a council member. And when council reviewed that particular ordinance, I sat there and said, when are they going to talk about what's in the lease? You know, they're inheriting a lease from an existing well. And we all know that the 3 leases that the village currently owns have a clause in them that prohibits horizontal fracking. It's in the current leases. So here we're about to acquire a 4th lease, and as a member of the public, I cannot participate in the conversation. I'm just listening. And they did 2 things that were unusual. One, they suspended the rule allowing public debate. That rule was suspended. And then they took a vote, and they took a vote without any of them, well, I'll just say without anyone commenting on the lease. After the vote, I was able to ask the question, did anyone read the lease? Did anyone see that clause? And no one was able to say, yes, we read the lease, and that clause is in there. That's the crux of what really happened.
Okay.
I'd just like to make a comment about the process. There are many times that the council will suspend the rules for an emergency legislation. It does not prevent speaking on the issue, and we did have the opportunity to speak on the issue that night. It merely suspends the need to have the issue raised at 3 different meetings. So people in the audience did have the opportunity.
I also attended that meeting. That meeting authorized the mayor to proceed to negotiate the contract. It's not done. It's not been signed yet. It's still in the works. Charles would like to take credit that he brought it up. Sandra and I were also very aware of that from all the work on the commission. So this wasn't a one-man effort that he didn't save the village from that, nor did he come up with a solution at all. We've come up with the solution by working with Bass Energy, and it will not be a horizontal well. That would have been immediately obvious to anybody dealing with the details, which weren't finalized at that point when it was brought up. So there's no hero here. The point of the matter is that's an example of why council is prudent on these things, and we don't need a charter amendment to tie the hands of council.
Well, if we don't have the charter amendment, in the future, someone like me might not be in the audience, and someone like you might not be able to assist to change the lease so that you insert that particular amendment, that particular
And again, had there been a charter amendment, this whole deal wouldn't have gone through. There'd have been a lease there that would have remained the risk of horizontal, and the village wouldn't have gotten the benefit of the 100,000 savings. So that's the absolute opposite effect of what they're trying to do with the charter amendment.
Okay, we can get to that at the end of the debate when you have
Okay.
10 minutes to speak to each other. My next question is, what did you think of Mayor Sean Riley's suggested land trust to basically pool property to have negotiating power if a driller were to come in and attempt to build a horizontal well on village property? So why don't we start with you, Mr. Auwerter?
You know, I wasn't a member of council. I wasn't following that at that point in time. This was early last calendar year, 2014. I've talked with Mayor Riley many times about it. I think it got greatly misconstrued as to what the intent was. Actually, one of the likely conclusions from the Regional Commission is going to center around conservation easements. Probably not anything close to a land trust, but that was one of the actual intents underneath that land trust idea. The intent was never to promote drilling. In fact, it broken down into detail. That, or more likely a specific conservation easements, might be the most effective step that we can take in a densely populated community like Gates Mills to prevent horizontal drilling. So I think it was greatly misconstrued, and it caused a small group who had good intent, because they and most other residents don't want to see horizontal drilling. So I don't begrudge anybody trying to go down the path. It just got taken over by people outside the state and turned into a much, much more radical proposal. So it really went off on a tangent. I think with the council, I think, realized that and appointed the Regional Commission, which Sandra has co-chaired. And I think we're really getting to a good solution to this issue.
So were you in favor of the land trust?
I didn't study it, so I can't comment specifically. I am in favor of the idea of conservation easements. So
Okay.
I think that should work. So.
Okay, Ms. Turner?
I think the issue of fracking has been a concern in the region for a long time, and there have been different approaches and discussions. This is yet another one. I think the idea of the land trust was to open a dialogue among residents about ways to conserve and preserve our property. I'd have to say that it was a terrible launch. And the idea was presented at a community meeting, and I think people were looking for solutions rather than to be presented, as opposed to this being, a forum for discussion and interested parties would get involved. So I would say that to your question of was I for it or against it, I was certainly for the discussion, but there never was a proposal upon which we as a council got to vote. It really got thwarted very early in the in the process.
Okay, Mr. Belson, what
Sure.
did you think about the land trust?
Well, I think that any land trust that uses village land as part of the core to start out, which the mayor did talk about in terms of control of this land trust, that the village would be able to be in a position to control that. I think that's shaky ground, literally. Like I said, there's great wealth and there's great harm, and I don't think the village of Gates Mills should be the test case for determining whether it will be great harm or great wealth. I think that we should stay out. The village itself should stay out, village-owned land, and that is something for members, like they do now. If they want to put in a shallow well, it's private property. It's ruled by the state, the state regulation. But I think, personally, I think it would be a mistake to do that. Minimally, the new amendment would say, it's not my view that matters, it's the collective view of the entire village, and council has the responsibility to be able to describe the land trust so that it doesn't get off to a rocky start, but in a very specific and understandable way for the voters, and they vote on it. That's my view, that it's not that complex, or if it is so complex that it can't be explained to the voters, then it shouldn't go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Auwerter, did you want to take a minute to follow up to respond to anything that
Yeah,
other two
just a
candidates
couple
said?
of more things on a charter amendment. Putting a charter amendment on the ballot, therefore having to go to the voters for something like that, is costly to the village. This charter amendment could cost the village as much as $10,000 this year. Last year, issue 51 cost the village, it's estimated at close to $20,000. These are not small undertakings. And for example, if we would have to go to the voters for this 10-acre parcel that we're trying to change the lease on, that would have added an expense to that and an extended period of time, all of the ups and downs. It's just not necessary. There is no predisposition in the village to turn this into horizontal drilling, so not in favor of that.
I would just add that a charter amendment is a significant action on the part of a community, and the folks that are proposing issue 56 never convened any community meetings to discuss the charter amendment. There was no invitation to people who had a different point of view to come and talk about the unintended consequences. Any of the communications about issue 51 were just people receiving the petition to sign, and then media coverage and a couple of emails. That's not the way that I would propose to go about doing something as serious as that.
I would just follow up with one quick question. I appeared, as did others who support this idea, in May and June at the council meeting, brought it up thinking that you all might adopt this in the same way that you did the water, that council adopted the charter amendment for city water 20 years ago. And you had no response, at those meetings. There was a public discussion of this concept. And after 2 or 3 months of no response from council whatsoever, after bringing it up at the council meetings, we decided the next step would be to put it as a charter amendment sponsored by the public rather than sponsored. As for cost, I contacted the director of the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections, and he said the costs relating to this particular issue are negligible. He said there would be costs if we had to advertise, but there are none. All the costs you're referring to, the fact that the village lawyers up and uses its consultants, those are the costs. These are village costs for lawyering, just like the regional committee has. I don't know, in the first 6 months, you had $12,000 of expenses, of which $8,000 are about lawyer fees.
Okay,
Wow.
I'm sorry to cut you guys off. We can get to that at the end of the debate, but we have to move on to the next question.
Absolutely false.
Okay, how do you feel about the less invasive vertical wells the village has now, and do they affect quality of life in the village? Ms. Turner, we'll start with you.
The village has 47 wells. Currently, many of them have been there historically for years. The fact that House Bill 278 was passed in 2004, which allowed for state control and not local control over drilling did increase the number of wells. There have not been any wells drilled in the village since 2009. We have an excellent fire department who receives any notices when there might be an issue. There have been a few incidents over the years. Personally, that's how I got involved in council to begin with, because I would see these wells in town and wonder how that could be. So personally, I don't support them, but I think they've been profitable for some people in the community. The village has wells, and it has allowed for us to obtain royalties of over $1 million and save about $35,000 a year on natural gas expenses. So it's a complex issue, and there's many sides and many opinions.
Okay, Mr. Belson?
The shallow wells are so much different from the deep well horizontal fracking. It's a multiple of 10 times more water, 10 times more injection required for the larger ones. So they're really not comparable. I would say from the village point of view, again, my idea, or the idea that people think that the village is different than private property, it sets an example, best practices. All the people look up to the village. I think that when the village puts in these horizontal wells on its own property, it's violating the basic principles of its own zoning. And that, to me, is a disconnect between the village's own zoning, which bans it. And again, as Chip said, it's not an industrial town. Zoning rules it out. And yet the village has approved 3 and just bought another one, or is in the process of negotiating a 4th. And as long as they have what Ned Hill, who gave a talk to all of us last year at this time, as long as they're what he called good leases, that they prohibit deep well fracking, horizontal fracking, that's fine. But once they don't have that specific line, in the lease, and they permit future horizontal fracking, it's a big problem.
Do you think the 47 vertical wells affect quality of life in the village? And if so, how?
Well, there's a potential for great harm. We know in other villages that they have blown, in Bainbridge, other places. The fire chief says it wasn't his decision, but the well that's right next to the river, the tennis court, the fire department, and the police department, you couldn't pick a worse spot for a well if there was ever a problem. It would just shut down the entire control center of our village. So, these are big issues that cannot be resolved by having a bill come in quickly, sign it. Well, we're in a rush to do it. All of these things need time, and the charter amendment provides that for the future.
Okay, Mr. Auwerter, how do you feel about the vertical wells, and do they affect quality of life in the village?
Well, first to clarify, a vertical well, particularly in the context of the geology of the village, goes down about 3,000 feet typically, whereas a horizontal well, horizontal drilling well, goes down about 8,000 to 10,000 feet. A vertical well may go out at the bottom a little bit directionally, but not very far, whereas a horizontal well goes down 8,000 to 10,000 feet and then can go out parallel to the surface as far as 2 miles. So it is a radically different approach, as Charles indicated. One of the things that we've learned on the Regional Commission with regard to vertical drill wells is that how they're constructed and how the installation is supervised, the quality of the outfit doing the drilling, et cetera, is of paramount importance. And when you hear stories about vertical wells not going well, it's pretty much probably been not particularly reputable drilling companies. I believe everything I understand that the village used very good, reputable companies when they did that. So there's a risk in a lot of things that can be done. I'm not fundamentally opposed to the vertical wells. Obviously, on private property, we have no control over that. I don't foresee getting any of that kind of control. I do think the village getting $1,300,000 in benefit over the last 10 years is an interesting decision, but I wasn't part of the decision to begin with, but I'm not fundamentally opposed to it.
Okay, we'll take a minute for follow-up. Ms. Turner?
Just to clarify, the village has no horizontal wells. You misspoke, and I just wanted to correct that. We
What
have
was the
vertical
context?
wells. You said we had horizontal wells. We have vertical
Yeah, we
wells.
have the vertical wells, which none of them have the ability, though, to become horizontal wells because they have a clause in the lease
Right.
that says it's not allowed. If you wanted to do it, you'd have to renegotiate it.
Exactly.
And that's why we have the charter amendment, because there's a concern that, well, next month that lease might be changed and that clause deleted. And if that were to happen, and especially given the example of the Hayes property, where the current lease that you inherited has a clause in it that does not prevent.
They haven't inherited it yet,
Yeah,
Charles. Let's get off of that. They have not inherited it. They're not going to inherit it without that amendment.
I'm talking about on the 12th of July, when council voted to approve the
They didn't
ordinance.
vote to approve,
Yeah,
voted
you
to approve
voted
the
to-
negotiations
go
to
ahead.
proceed.
Well, they authorized the mayor, it's.
To negotiate.
It's
To negotiate the final
1215-17, they authorized the mayor to negotiate it at a
Negotiate.
specific
Right.
price.
Negotiate.
Right, and at that
Negotiate.
moment, the lease in place, and the minutes say, the mayor says that it doesn't matter what the lease says. You can go, the minutes for that, it's public record, you can go, it doesn't matter what the lease says. If it allows for horizontal drilling, then we're going to have horizontal drilling. If it doesn't,
That's not
Okay, I'm
what-
sorry to cut you off. Mr. Auwerter, did you want to take a minute for follow-up, and then we need to move on to the next question?
Just, all I know is the process is, since that was brought up to council, the mayor's actually been the one that's worked on the amendment, and it's been properly addressed, and so I don't know what the process would have been otherwise, except that it's all going to be a very good solution. So again, I just think horizontal is drastically different. I'm not opposed to horizontal drilling in a rural community or a community that wants to see that, but I just don't see communities that are densely populated and residentially zoned that don't want to see it. I don't like to see it imposed. We're working very hard on a lot of other aspects of what's going on at the state level. I'm meeting with state senators and people that have influence down there to see if we can deal with some of the other issues that are in front of the Senate this fall, and just to bring more control. So I'm optimistic that we're going to see some progress.
Okay, obviously you all have a lot more to say about drilling in the village, but my next question is, what are some other issues that are important to Gates Mills right now? So why don't we start with you?
Well, actually, to me, drilling actually, other than the people trying to stir it up, isn't that big of an issue. So I don't like to see all of the attention. We should be focusing on much more serious issues. The biggest issue facing the village is fiscal. We face a challenge. Our operating deficit is approximately 15% a year of our budget due to the elimination of the inheritance tax that hits a community like Gates Mills very hard. We are filling that budget gap by eating into our reserves, and that runs out in another 2 to 3 years. So we have a lot of work to do to address this gap. I am a businessman with 40 years experience, specializing in finance and operations. I'm particularly strong at cost reductions or cost management and financial planning, and I think I can bring a lot to the equation to help bring some further sense. Council and the mayor have taken a lot of steps over this past term to cut expenses, to regionalize some things, but we have still a lot more work to go, and I know that people like Sandra are in full agreement with that. So that's our biggest single issue that we're facing, and we've got to address it properly and maintain the competitiveness of the village and do it prudently and proactively.
Okay, Ms. Turner?
I would agree that, and I think Chip has stated that very, very well. I'll talk about another issue or some other issues that I think are of importance. Gates Mills is a wonderful community with many volunteers, well-established community organizations, and a very generous culture. We are in a position now to have some of our residents kind of aging out of their homes. We do not have multiple unit dwellings available in the village. People are moving out, and it's our opportunity to be attracting young individuals and families to the community. And so a lot of what I've been doing over the past 4 years is to be involved in the schools and in the community, with the community club and Positively Gates Mills and the school liaison committee, Healthy Hillcrest, to really make this an even more welcoming place. So I think from a positive perspective, we have so much going for ourselves, and this is a great opportunity for us to again kind of renew the energy and the youth in the village. We just had a welcome social for new residents over the past 3 years. We had probably about 50 individuals and families there to get them involved in the community organizations and to be even more proud and to be a part of this community.
Okay, Mr. Belson, other than drilling, what's the biggest issue
I
facing the
think that the
village?
two issues of both finance and education are very important, but they're certainly right up there in importance, and they're certainly up there with issues like zoning and fracking, all the things. I mean, Gates Mills has spent almost a year now on the regional commission. I don't see, I've met with people who said exactly what Chip said. They said, the regional commission, that's important, but why isn't there a regional commission on our schools? Why aren't we comparing, we're paying a tremendous amount in taxes to support schools. Do we have people who are on the school board? Do we sit at the table as an equal in any way? Can we look at that? And I would say
The Mayfield School
the
District.
Mayfield School District. I said yes. I think that would be an important thing. These are all important issues. We need a regional commission for that. Maybe it will take a year and another 6 months of implementation. But these are important issues, the same with finance. I think that there could be more transparency so people are aware of the issues more directly. The Regional Commission could post on its website the schedule and the budget, for the project. The same for the school board, for all of these things. The tools are there, I think, to inform the public, better inform the public on where we stand on both finance and education, in the same way that we have a website for the Regional Commission.
Okay, Mr. Auwerter, did you want to take a minute for follow-up?
Yeah, the purpose for the regional commission was to bring various communities together, because we believe that the only way to have any impact on at the state level is to go forth as a region, not as one little community. So that was the appropriate reason to make that regional. I believe that Gates Mills, and I believe Sandra in particular, are very aware and involved with the Mayfield schools and what's going on there. She is the liaison, but I don't think a commission on schools is something, I'm not aware of what benefit that would particularly bring. On the finances, the website is full of all the details of the finance, including a 5-year projection that lays out the dilemma that we're facing, and I think that that's been very well communicated. I'm sure that as we work towards further solutions, there's more communication, that a lot more that we'll need to do to make sure everybody's on board with whatever the steps will be to address our budget deficit. But so I certainly support that, but I don't think we need a regional commission on finance. That's really the responsibility of the council, and then communicating with the voters or the residents to make sure everybody's well aware of what we're trying to do. So.
Okay, Ms. Turner.
My response is probably has more to do with approach than the particular issue. And I think what Chip and I have in common is that, when we see a problem, we get together with other people to do some problem solving and resolve that within the context, again, of the law and the, and the charter of the village. I unfortunately have not seen some of that same kind of collaborative effort on the part of Mr. Belson, and many times, again, there's conflict and controversy stirred up that I think, while he has many good issues that he has to raise, and I share some of the same concerns. I mean, as far as the issues are concerned, we have a lot of commonality. It's really about approach, and I think one of the key differences among us is how we would approach that problem solving in a way that's either consensual or conflicted. And I think that's a big, for me, that's a big issue in this campaign.
Okay, Mr. Belson, did you want to take a minute for follow-up?
Sure. The idea of reaching out and listening to the community, listening to our voters, listening to our residents, is key for all of us. I would agree completely with Sandra. The next step, however, of how we listen and what we hear, I just find that actions speak louder than words in general. And again, like I said before, when I sit at a meeting and the rules are suspended to cut off the same kind of communication that occurred 6 years ago when these gas wells were put in, the shallow gas wells. Sandra said in June she admired how previous councils had asked the residents for their opinions. And then in July, she voted to close off and have no one, before the vote, comment. So I just think, again, voters should just look. The words are one thing and actions are another.
Okay. That's something, again, you can address at the end of the debate if you wish. But on to the next question. The village isn't far from the massive amount of retail, in Mayfield Heights, but it's fairly rural. So does the village need more retail, or do you like those natural amenities? Mr. Belson, why don't we start with you?
I think the council member who's running for re-election, who's not here right now, in his handout, he says that Gates Mills is I'm going to read it because I don't want to misquote him. I want to say paradise, but I don't think that's what he says. I think he said it's utopia. And I would agree with that statement, and I think there's the right balance now with a library, a post office, and we're hanging on to the post office. We're hoping it stays. I understand the federal government, the post office is looking at the viability of such a small town having that. Although if you go there, as I did, raising petitions, you see people coming from Chesterland, they're coming from all over. So it's not just used by people from Gates Mills. But in any case, I think that the zoning that we have that limits industry, that limits big box stores, limits us to the residential community we have is the core. Once zoning falls apart and we start making exceptions and granting variances, then you have a city like Houston, which has no zoning whatsoever. People love it, the people who live there, but some of the people who visit say we need zoning, and I think that's one of our great strengths here. The review committees, the architectural review board, you can't change the color of your shutters from Gates Mills green to another color without consent of the board, but you can get a permit to drill with no problem.
Okay, Ms. Turner?
It's a very interesting question, Sarah. My husband and I have 5.5 acres. We still have a water well and our own septic system in the backyard. And yet we're probably within biking distance of a Starbucks. So as far as I'm concerned, that is idyllic, utopian living, and I think if you talk to most residents, they would concur with that. Also, we're a bird sanctuary. There are a lot of areas that are preserved by the Gates Mills Land Conservancy over many, many years, and we have many generous residents who have contributed their properties and put easements on to prevent development. So again, that's kind of part of the community culture, and I would expect and hope to see that continue well into the future for the next generations to enjoy.
Mr. Auwerter, more retail, or do you like things the way they are?
I like things the way they are. The village actually faced a fairly controversial topic on trying to take the small little, what you might call our downtown area. You wouldn't necessarily know it's downtown if you drove through it, but it's where our town hall is and where our library and all is. And what had been there, this is maybe 10, 15 years ago, maybe even more than that, I'm not sure, I think about that, was getting dilapidated and needed to be renovated. And it just opened the door to, no, it was much later than that, because Janet was involved in the fundraising for the library. I think it was the late 90s. So it opened the door, and once you open that door, a lot of people come through that want to do all kinds of development, and as Charles said, it can really start to ruin your zoning. So I think, on the other hand, what we did in the downtown area of the village turned out to be absolutely delightful. Our little Sarah's Place restaurant is quite a boon to the village from a tax revenue standpoint, and I think has been assimilated very well. So I think we just need to be prudent within the confines that are already zoned for commercial to make sure that we're getting as much revenue from that, but no expansion. I'm not in favor of changing the character or spirit of this village at all. So.
Okay, Mr. Belson, would you like to take a minute for follow-up?
I'm in complete agreement with everyone whose comments have been made. Just back to zoning, the Sarah's restaurant is on the site of the former, was it the Red Fox Inn? That area was zoned since around 1900 or whenever the zoning ordinances came in. Some are as recent as 72, but that area has existed. And there is a nursery, but these are all uses that are compatible with our zoning. So I think that, as Ed Welch said, it's a utopia, and it's a pleasure to live there. And I think all of us want to preserve what's there.
So,
Okay.
absolutely.
Would you like to take a minute for follow-up?
No, thank you.
No, I'm good.
Okay. So all council members and the mayor are unpaid in Gates Mills, which is kind of a rarity in Cuyahoga County. So, Ms. Turner, we'll start with you. Do you think that there should be some compensation? Why or why not?
I got involved in, in running and serving, knowing that. So it's not so much an issue that, that I give a great deal of thought to. I think that, we have so many volunteers, not only the people that serve on council and mayor who donate so much of their time so generously. That's one of the key features of the community. So I think it's kind of in keeping with our style and the way that we make our contributions.
Mr. Auwerter?
I'm in full agreement. I think if we tried to change and start paying our politicians, we'd get paid politicians, and that's about the last thing we need. We get people who want to preserve the utopian environment that we've all commented on. We all do it with the spirit of community and volunteerism, and I think it works very, very well. So I think we get very good quality on the council and in the mayor's office, and I think that the way we conduct ourselves is exemplary. I think other communities should actually look at it. I can't imagine why some of these other communities need to pay their people to only show up to preserve what they already love. I couldn't take the money. I want to do this because I love the community and I want to see it continue.
Okay, Mr. Belson?
Yes, I think it's pretty remarkable that not only the mayor and council, but all of the committees, if you add up the numbers, it's in the range of 30 to 40 people, excluding the regional commission, and then the regional commission is a number somewhere between 20 and 30. These are all volunteers. There might be one or two paid professionals, at a nominal fee, who are not residents necessarily of Gates Mills who advise, but it's extraordinary that it's 30 to 40 people year in, year out, and something special like the Regional Commission brings another 30 people volunteering their time from not just Gates Mills but elsewhere. It means it's a special place, and people, want to help out as best they can.
Okay, Ms. Turner, did you want to take a minute for follow-up?
No, thank you.
Mr. Auwerter?
No, I'm good.
Mr. Belson?
I just spoke. I'm not going to speak again.
Okay. So Mayor Sean Riley will not seek re-election this year. On a scale from 1 to 10, Mr. Auwerter, we'll start with you. How would you rate his performance and why?
Interesting question.
Obviously, my perspective is as a resident. I think Sean has been an outstanding mayor. All of the council people that I've gotten to know very well with all this involvement on the Regional Commission and on the Finance Committee and the like, feel that he's done a great job of seeking the opinions of everybody involved. He's well suited for what he's done with his legal background. And I think he's just done an exemplary job. I'm sorry to see him not run again. I think everybody's sorry, but at the same time, I think Karen Schneider is going to be an outstanding replacement, and so I don't think we're going to miss a beat. So, I think have been in good hands, and I very much feel we're going to continue to be in good hands.
So what's your rating on a scale of 1 to 10, Mayor Riley?
I think 10.
Okay, all right. Ms. Turner?
I think that Mayor Riley has some unique skills that he's brought to the village, and he came in at a time when there was a great opportunity, let's put it that way, to systematize processes at the village and put in place performance reviews and other kind of standardized administrative procedures. And I think given his legal and administrative background, that was something that he could, that was a sweet spot for him. As an attorney, many issues that come up before the village do involve legal opinions and knowledge. So I think he's been able to lend that expertise. And on those things, I would give him a 10. He and I have had some differences when it's come to engagement of the community and involvement of the community. So that probably was more of a growing edge, let's call it, for him. In that arena, I'd probably give him a 7. But overall, I think he's done a good job, made a great contribution to the village. And if he was running, I would support him again. But Karen Schneider is just a terrific public servant, and more than that, a community leader. Lots of heart for the village, and so we are going to be in excellent hands going forward.
So if you could just briefly elaborate on the differences that you had with Mayor Riley in terms of community engagement, just briefly. I would say things we had we had an issue with a community garden that was kind of displaced at the beginning of my term with the council, and that did get resolved, and it ended up being probably a better solution for everyone, but it probably caused a little bit more upheaval in the village than perhaps was necessary. So we talked about the land trust. I think, again, he was presenting an idea for discussion, and there was kind of room for some doubt and assumptions and misconceptions. So just along those lines, but again, on the whole, he's done a great job for the village. Okay. Mr. Belson, how did you feel about Mayor Sean Riley's performance? And
well, I would
what's
look at
his
it
rating?
as an architect who was a partner in a 300-person firm, in the sense of a performance evaluation. And from that perspective, I would look at two things. One, to the degree that you're a manager and the degree you are a leader. And I would say the mayor has done wonderfully well as a manager for us, and would be a 10 on that line item. I would say as a leader, and I'm referencing the land trust here as the one area on a 1 to 10 scale, I would say that that would only be a 9 because of the rollout of the land trust and how it was perceived by many people as an invitation to bring fracking into the village. So I would give him a 9 on that. 10 as a manager and a 9 as a leader.
Okay.
It's still pretty good.
It is.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Yeah, I think he'd be pleased to hear
Yeah.
that. So.
Mr. Auwerter, did you want to take a minute for
I
follow-up?
think the only clarification is I think Jesus Christ may be the only individual in our history that gets a 10. So probably on an absolute scale, maybe he's really at a 9, because I'm sure he's done a few things wrong, but overall I think very impressed with the job he's done. So.
Okay, Ms. Turner?
No, thank you.
Mr. Belson?
No.
Okay. So as you both have mentioned, Council President Karen Schneider is the only person running for mayor, which means she will likely be the next mayor. How do you feel about her leading the village, and do you think she's going to be a good leader? So why or why not? Mr. Belson, we'll start with you.
Well, I give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and I think I hope she'll be a great leader for our village and follow all of the other great leaders in our village.
Okay. What do you know about her as of now? And
well, I know she's president pro tem. That means when the mayor is not around, she presides over council meetings, and she's been on council for over 20 years. She has a great deal of experience. She's been on just every committee that we have, and she's a very engaging person and knows knows how the village operates, so everyone has great expectations.
Okay, Ms. Turner?
I've gotten to know Karen Schneider very well over the last 4 years that I've served on council, and especially the last year as we've co-chaired the regional commission. And I've learned a number of things about Karen, including that she's been giving to the community since her children were in elementary school in Gates Mills. She has a way of getting things done through people, motivating people in a very kind of quiet and unassuming way. So not necessarily someone who takes the spotlight, but can be counted on to get things done. And as I said earlier, has true heart for the village. So I think that that she will do an excellent job in the coming term.
Mr. Auwerter?
I've gotten to know Karen over the past year as I've been working on the regional commission. As Sandra said, Karen and Sandra have been the co-chairs of that. I'm very impressed with how well connected Karen is in the village. She just knows probably just about everybody. I'm sure if she doesn't, she's going to try to meet them at some point, but she just knows everybody. She listens to everybody. I think she's got a great sense of the pulse of the community, what's important. I have watched her deal with differing opinions. She respects different opinions. She works hard to understand why somebody might be coming from a perspective that might be different from hers. I think she works very hard to try to be inclusive, and I think she's going to just do a great job of in fact, probably leading our community further forward. So I'm very pleased that she was willing to step up when Sean decided not to run. So I think she's the perfect candidate.
Okay, Mr. Belson, would you like to take a minute for follow-up?
No, thank you.
Ms. Turner?
Okay.
Mr. Auwerter?
No?
All right. Last question. Ms. Turner, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Does Gates Mills identify with the Chagrin Valley communities or the Hillcrest communities more? Why or why not, and what does that mean to you to identify with either one?
Okay. Certainly we would identify with the Hillcrest communities because of the school district. That really holds us together. And in terms of some of our relationships for emergency services, ambulance service, for example, that would also tie us into Hillcrest, and probably just people's day in and day out commuting would tie us to Hillcrest. But we're also tied to Chagrin Valley with regard to our dispatch, with regard to some of the competitiveness among the school systems, and thinking again of Moreland Hills and Hunting Valley and Chagrin Falls. Those are areas that have a landscape that's more similar to ours.
Right.
I think we're a community that has friends all over, so we would be able to relate to the Hillcrest and to the Chagrin Valley communities, and so I think I see kind of connections in both directions.
Okay, Mr. Auwerter?
I probably don't have as much perspective as Sandra would, but I was going to say pretty much exactly the same thing. I think we are an interesting blend. If you looked at the residents of our community, that there are those that probably feel closer to the Hillcrest community and those that feel closer to the Chagrin River community. On the other hand, I don't think anybody that's close to one of those is against or different from the other community. So we are probably a unique blend. I think if you went further down the Chagrin Valley, they'd say more they're Chagrin Valley focused rather than Hillcrest. And if you went more up the hill from the village, they'd say they're more Hillcrest focused. So we're kind of a great blend. And quite frankly, that gives us interesting opportunities if we're going to look at any regionalization of anything or any combination of any services that makes sense. We can go in a variety of directions and probably meet well with any of those communities. So I think it's a nice base that we actually are in, so as a result.
Mr. Belson?
I would agree. There certainly is overlap and benefits of looking to the west and to the south. We have affinities with Hunting Valley in terms of the size of our population, the type of population we have, and yet we have different school districts, and all of those are important issues. I think Going ahead, there probably will be more regionalization, but it might not be simply limited to one or the other. It will be a combination of the both areas that you mentioned.
Okay, Ms. Turner, would you like to take a minute for follow-up?
No, I think we've responded well to that question.
So do
Mr.
I.
Auwerter?
Yes.
Mr. Belson?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have reached the end of our debate, and candidates, I will give you about 10 minutes to bring up anything that we didn't discuss or follow up on anything that you didn't feel like you had a chance to explain yourself on before. So, take it away.
Well, I'll pass on this one and wait for the second. I think you asked very good questions. I think you've covered the questions that I had anticipated, that others had anticipated, and I don't see an area that hasn't really been examined that's important to our voters. But I'll be willing to pass the baton to Sandra.
I'm going to make an unusual comment, and that is to speak for someone who's not in the room. And this is my own comment. This is not from Ed, but Ed Welsh is the other individual who's running for council. He's served on council for many years, and while oftentimes Ed and I have differences of opinion on council, it's a good discussion and debate. And Ed certainly represents a constituency in the community that have supported him for many years. So I just wanted to include his name in the discussion today for consideration.
Okay, Mr. Auwerter?
Well, I think I'll just take the opportunity to kind of re-summarize. I'm running for council because, number one, to preserve the character and spirit of our wonderful village, and to try to work, given the challenges we're facing, to secure our future and make sure that we can maintain what we have. As I've indicated, I think that the fiscal challenge is something we have to address very prudently and proactively, and make sure that we can get a consensus in the community. It's going to be tricky. I think I bring the right amount of skills with my years of business experience, in particular focus on operations, on finance, on financial planning and cost management. I have very much enjoyed working with the Regional Commission and very closely with Sandra and Karen in that regard, and I think I can work. I've gotten to know all of the other council members, and I think I could work very well with all of those council members and continue to address the issues that affect the village. I do think that drilling has been made more controversial than it needs to be. It's not a particular threat to the village. All of the drilling experts that we talk to say it's highly, highly unlikely that we'll ever get to that point, given the geologic formations underneath us. Perhaps if gas gets to $200 a barrel, that assessment might change, but at $40 a barrel, there is no near-term issue. At the same time, I think we're doing some very good things to address steps that we can take. I just met with a very prominent state senator last week who's got a very good ear on what's going on down in the Senate. I think there are some things that we can do to address some of the issues that are in front of the Senate. And that's just an example of, by the way that I work. I do work more behind the scenes. I talk to a lot of people. I've got a very good sense of what issues are and can sense people's opinion. I get results. The nature of my work world has been going into organizations that face challenges, and I have to get results, otherwise the business couldn't survive. So I'm very results-oriented, but in a very collaborative way, and I think I can bring a lot of service to the village. Been a resident again for 19 years. I think I know a wide variety of people in the village already, but obviously there's a lot more that I would need to meet. But I'm looking forward to it, and I hope that I can be voted in.
And what do you do professionally?
I'm what would be called a turnaround professional. I go into companies that are facing operating in financial difficulties. I assume a role, sometimes very active in a interim management capacity or in a financial advisory capacity, and work through what the problems are between the stakeholders and what's going on with the business, and try to get to a successful resolution and get the organization back on its feet. I've worked with mostly for-profit, but I've also worked with several not-for-profit organizations and tried to help them straighten out. So
Okay. Anyone else?
I neglected to say much about my background at the beginning of this discussion, and I would just say that it's been a real honor to serve the village in this first term. I've learned a lot, and I feel that some of the things that I've learned about the village and its operations and the people and the employees really kind of positions me to be an even more effective and efficient council member going forward. It's been a great learning experience to work on the regional commission this past year and to serve closely with Chip and with Karen. I think are most proud of our influence over House Bill 8, which would have created even more state control over drilling, and we were able to draw attention to that among communities and state organizations and even the Cleveland Metro Parks to kind of forestall that from going any further in the Senate. So there's great potential there. There's great excitement in the village. I'm just looking really forward to the next term, the coming years, and look forward to working with Chip and Ed in those efforts.
And the regional commission is expected to present some of their findings when?
We're going over the draft reports now. Those should be completed in December, and hopefully, publication in January,
Okay.
and then distribution.
Okay.
As an architect, planner, and environmentalist, it's been very interesting and exciting to be part of what's going on in Gates Mills at this time. Back in June, I wrote the opinion piece in your Sun Press paper where you ran the pro-con opinion on House Bill 8. And the yes representatives were Representative Christina Hagan and Tim Gintner, the two sponsors of the bill, which basically tried to include much more land area subject to horizontal fracking, in addition to trying to reduce the amount of time for permits for horizontal fracking. And they represented the yes position. And my piece was representing the no position. And basically it was pointing out that House Bill would permit fracking, as was mentioned, on the metro parks, of which we have vast areas of Gates Mills are part of the Cleveland Metro Parks. So I think that the Regional Commission and residents have worked together to help identify problems with House Bill 8. It was passed unanimously by 98 members of the House. When they were asked about these particular issues, they said, well, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, said, we really didn't realize that the bill contained these additional clauses that would extend the extent of fracking. And it was residents who brought that issue to the foreground. I think that that spirit of resident participation is the spirit that motivated our own regional, our own amendment, charter amendment, that residents do have a part to play in, I'll say, slowing down the inevitability of fracking. When it's passed at 98-0, that means people don't understand the bill. My view is when the purchase of the Hayes lease passes 6-0, that means they didn't understand the lease. It's the same kind of issue, that the public can identify problems and legislators can address them, but the public has an important role and the residents have an important role, and I've been pleased to be able to participate with those residents who have thought that to be important and who suggested that I run so that Chip, Ed, and Sandra would not run unopposed, so that residents would have a choice, a real choice, a clear choice, and that has been a very interesting process over the last few months.
Okay. Follow-up, anyone?
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our debate today. Thank you for joining us, candidates and readers.